Hello, I'm your host, Lauren Mark Campbell. In the spring of 2018, the Linda May Mann Lema Foundation uncovered a compelling story that has its roots deeply steeped in all that is California. It involves a World War II United States Marine Corps veteran who is now interred in the Pleasant Grove Cemetery in Elk Grove. His sons shared his story with us. Enlisting in 1943 at the age of 17, he survived some of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War before his service ended in a very unique way in China in 1945. He returned home and for the rest of his life carried many physical and emotional scars from his war experiences. In spite of these burdens, he settled in Elk Grove and established one of the most recognized businesses in the community, now operated by the third generation of his family. This is the story of Preston Hanford Sr. His story is narrated by David Lema.
Through the years, there have been many poignant stories of the valor and courage of Elk Grove community veterans. One such story is that of Preston Hanford Sr. Preston enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1943, just a month before he turned 18. He was born in 1925 in Crow's Landing, California in Stanislaus County. The son of a farmer, he was anxious to fight for his country. So, with his father's permission, he enlisted. After basic and advanced training at Camp Pendleton, like so many others from California, he was deployed to the Pacific Theater to fight the Japanese as they marched across the Pacific towards the West Coast. Preston's first combat experience came at a place called Peleliu Island. The Peleliu Island chain is situated 1,000 miles southeast of Manila. It was strategically important to neutralize Peleliu Island and its airstrip to provide a defense to the right flank of General MacArthur's campaign to retake the Philippines. On Peleliu Island, the commanding general of the assault predicted a 3-day battle. The Battle of Peleliu, codenamed Operation Stalemate, took 73 days and resulted in the highest casualty rate of any amphibious assault in American military history. Of the approximately 28,000 Marines and Army infantry troops, 40% died or were wounded. After the Battle of Peleliu, Preston was next deployed to Okinawa. Once again, he was thrust into one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. The Battle of Okinawa was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific Theater. It lasted 82 days and resulted in 52,000 Allied and 117,000 Japanese casualties. To say the least, Preston, a teenage farm boy from California, had been party to and witnessed some of the most horrific scenes of any human conflict in history. In less than 2 years, he had become hardened and calloused beyond imagination, a circumstance repeated tens of thousands of times over in World War II. Shortly after the Battle of Okinawa, the Japanese surrendered and Preston was deployed to mainland China, specifically Shenzhen, China. This locale held a very profound connection for the United States Marine Corps, because on December 7, 1941, just as Pearl Harbor was being attacked, the Japanese captured 203 United States Marine and Navy troops who were stationed in China to protect U.S. interests during the Chinese Civil War. These Marines and sailors were sent to Shenzhen, where they were held as prisoners of war and slave laborers from that day until mid-September of 1945, when Preston and others of the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions arrived to free them. In China and all across the Pacific, Allied forces accepted the surrender of Japanese forces. Most often, the surrender was offered by the highest-ranking Japanese officer, but, as a sign of disrespect, was often accepted by a junior Allied officer or even an enlisted man. In Shenzhen, Preston was given the assignment of accepting the surrender from a major who was the commander of a unit of the Imperial Japanese Army. On a quiet and empty street in the heart of Shenzhen, separated by 50 yards of open space, Preston, a corporal, and the major faced each other with troops from each side standing at attention behind. On cue, the two men began a slow walk to meet in the middle. When the distance between them was less than a yard, the major came to attention and snapped a crisp salute. Corporal Hanford, filled with disgust and loathing for his enemy, merely let his weapon sling slip from his shoulder, with the butt of the rifle hitting the ground with a dull thud. Resting his elbow on the muzzle, Preston leaned in toward the major and, seething with anger, spit out his first words. "Well, you son of a bitch, we kicked your ass, didn't we?" Unfazed and still at attention, the Japanese officer calmly and quietly replied back, "Yes, you did, Marine." Preston was stunned. His arch-enemy had spoken to him in perfect English. Seeing that clarification was in order, the major explained that as a young boy he had been sent to California to be educated. After graduating from college in the late 1930s, under threat to his family, he returned to Japan and accepted a commission in the Imperial Japanese Army. Preston just stood there. All the air had been taken out of the moment. All his anger and disgust had dissipated. What he now saw before him was another warrior who, he was sure, had also experienced his share of the horrors of war. After a few moments of silence, the major spoke. "I think we'd better get on with this." "But I have no idea what to do," replied Preston. "Okay," the major offered. "First, you sternly order me to have my men stack and surrender their weapons. Then I'll offer you my sword and surrender. You take it, and we're done." Following the major's guidance, Preston shouldered his rifle and barked the order for the Japanese to surrender their weapons. The major spun on his heel and relayed the order to his troops. When all of the Japanese carbines were all arranged in neat cones, muzzles in the air, the major turned back to face Preston and slowly withdrew his sword from the scabbard. Laying it across his outreached palms, the major offered his sword to Preston in surrender. As Preston reached out and took the sword, the major again saluted. Holding the handle of the sword in his left hand, Preston stood at attention and returned the salute. With that, for both men, the fighting was finally over. While the fighting may have been over, like so many World War II veterans, Preston suffered throughout his life with the physical and emotional consequences of his war experiences. He returned to California and soon settled in the Elk Grove area. He began a successful business, which today is being run by his grandson, the third generation of Hanfords to run Hanford Ready Mix Incorporated.
This podcast is a production of the Linda May Mann Lema Foundation and is protected by copyright. To enjoy other podcasts and get information about the year-round activities of the foundation, please visit our website at lmmlfoundation.org.